Welcome to Mindful Escape, the podcast that helps you find your purpose and your passion. My name's Leighton Jewett and I am your host, and today we have Jenna on the show. Jenna is a spiritual life coach, and she talks about her journey of going to business school and coming out and realizing that taking the traditional path was not going to make her happy. She goes deep into her journey, the lessons, and any advice that she'd give her younger self going through a very long, extended period of uncertainty. This is a great episode, so listen closely and we'll jump straight in. Jenna, thank you so much for coming onto the Mindful Escape. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So my name's Jenna and I am a spiritual life coach. And I also wrote this book called Heavenly Creatures, which explains the journey of a person working through past life trauma. And I can't say I know for sure if past lives are real, but it's just a fun book. It's spiritual fiction. Yeah. Nice to meet you.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for coming on. So you went to business school and decided to go down your own route rather than maybe a more traditional one. So tell us a little bit about what that was and what that looked like for you.
Right. So that's a really good question, actually. I'm sure a lot of my business school friends would be curious also to know. So I went into business school and I started a business club, actually, and this was graduate school, so it did pretty well. And I realized even with that like small amount of success, like I was not happy. And I realized like if I just go down this route, it's going to be for other people's approval and trying to fit into this societal box. And I just knew that this isn't me, but I didn't live in the way that I wanted to live before. So I wasn't really sure like what me would look like, but I knew that it wouldn't make me happy to not live as myself, which is what made me, break the mold and get out of there and start coaching. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's to me, and maybe not to you, but to me that seems like quite an early realization. Was there anything that was holding you back from doing that? Did you not think, oh, perhaps I should just go down the normal route like everyone else? Or what was kind of coming up for you?
Yeah, okay. So that's so true. That is a pretty early realization because when I was in high school, actually, I began my spiritual journey in high school. So I read the Quran, I read the word truth in there, and that word truth really struck me. And I realized, like, I don't know what the truth is, and I want to know. And it started me on this journey of, like, what is the truth? So I started early, and then I moved to Korea after college, and I tried to fit in again, because I wasn't fitting in, obviously, in high school, because I was like studying Islamic philosophy and stuff. But then after college, I kind of tried to fit back into the mold and it just didn't work. And I realized like I can't fit into this mold. It's not making me happy.
Yeah, that's so good. So I don't know if you know the answer to this question now, but that's obviously such a deep question, like what is the truth? And could be used in a variety of ways. But do you have an answer for yourself for that question at this point in your life, or where are you with that?
Yeah, I am at the point where I've studied a lot of different traditions. So first it was like Islam, and I hung out with, the Muslim Student Association, and we would always have like the Friday prayers, and then there was an advisor, Mr. Islam, who made us great like chicken curry, like lamb curry. Sorry, just tangent, but just remember this. I miss those curries.
Key
Um,
points.
yeah, yeah. And so Islamic philosophy and then shamanism and also meditation and Tibetan Buddhism. And then I realized, like, studying all these traditions, they're actually ways to let go of beliefs within ourselves. So we're conditioned in a certain way, and all of these traditions are meant to bring us closer to our unconditioned form. So truth is like something that you can't really say. The Tao that can be spoken is not the true Tao. Something like that.
Wow. Yeah. It feels so deep. We've literally just dived straight in here. So let's track back a little bit. Let's go back to the transition, really. So you just felt like you weren't going to be happy going into the set boxes as you described them. What kind of challenges came up for you about moving away from those set paths that are laid out for us from society?
Yeah, there are a lot of challenges. Yeah, like society does not want you to break the mold. So definitely when I left business school, there was a period of like, what am I going to do then? Because I had this future all planned out. Like I was going to, get into consulting or banking or a different company that was business related. And then I had no idea who I was, what I liked, what I wanted to do. So there was a period of like figuring that out. And that was really hard because when you're following society's plan for you, you just kind of do the next thing, like you're doing a checklist. But when you go off on your own, there is no checklist. It's like the road that is not traveled. So you're like, am I doing this right? Like, what's happening? Yeah, so there was a lot of uncertainty and a lot of like, oh no, what's going to happen next? But once I figured out that my real passion is helping others, like actually, this was my passion when I was younger, also. It's just that societally, it wasn't encouraged. It was like, you should be helping yourself, not not others. At least in my family and in my culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, when I came upon that, like I want to help others, and I really was always following self-development and coaching and other coaches. It's like, I'll be a coach. I just went into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So through these challenges,
Mhm.
how long did it take you to kind of get through that uncertainty? Because I know for me that it has a big impact on the decision you make. Because if you are unclear or you haven't got that set path, you
Mhm.
might not go full steam ahead for what your passion is because of that doubt, because of that unsure of which direction to go. And obviously, the longer that uncertainty goes on for, the more likely it is that you go back into that set route. So, how long did that take? What lessons did you pick up through that journey? And was there a point that you thought, do you know what? Maybe I'll just go the normal way?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Those are all really good questions, actually. It's not linear. There have been like, times when I'm like, no, I'm a coach, like, and then there are other times when it's more down and I'm like, should I get like a part-time job or, something like that? So it took about a year to get out of the uncertainty. And what really helped actually was to let everything go in my mind and in my heart. I follow a spiritual teacher named Adya Shanti, and I would listen to his tapes. And as I listened, he's like a non-dual spiritual teacher. So when I listen to him, it helps me to just let go of all expectations.
Mhm.
And in that space of letting go of everything, something would bubble up from inside. And that would be like what I really wanted to do. So that was why I started writing the book, and I finished the book and published it, because I let go of everything. And then that little thing came up of like, your childhood dream was to write a book. And then after that, it was the coaching. So if you can let go of, the fear and uncertainty and all of that for a moment and just be there, then your intuition kind of comes up and kind of like tells you which direction to go. And it's important to be quiet for that, because intuition is very silent. It's not loud like fear and anxiety. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, as well as listening to the, is it like a meditation from Adyashanti or?
Yeah, it's kind of, he has guided meditations on there, but it's mostly like a recording of his talks.
Okay.
And his talks are, I have so many of his books, but like some of them are like Resurrecting Jesus is one of his Audible books, which is about the spiritual journey, compared to the journey of Jesus. And then, yeah, it's really profound.
Yeah.
And there's another one called The End of Your World, which is about spiritual awakening and how there are these cul-de-sacs that you can get trapped in as you are awakening spiritually, which is really helpful because you're listening to it and you're like, oh, I'm in that right now.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So for anyone who's listening and they're maybe not as spiritual, but they
Mhm.
want to start tapping into their intuition, listening to their gut, whatever we want to call it, what kind of tips would you give to them to start implementing today?
Mhm. So I don't want to say meditate because you probably heard that a lot, but okay, let's not call it a meditation. Let's just say if you're spending all of your time working or on YouTube or on social media, then block out a time when you're not on any of those, every day. So maybe you can only stand the silence for like 10 minutes, then just stay in silence for 10 minutes. And there's going to be a lot of stuff that comes up, maybe like childhood stuff or like anxiety or of like, what am I doing? Like it's 10 minutes, but like,
Yeah.
I can't handle the silence. Uh-huh. But just know that that's totally normal. You're not abnormal for feeling like that. And just allow yourself to feel anxious if you feel anxious, or allow your thoughts to just go. If your thoughts are like going really quickly, it's okay. So like the acceptance is what's going to help you to stay in those 10 minutes of silence. And then if you can do more, then, go to 30 minutes, an hour. Um, I don't know of anyone who does more than 1 hour of meditation, but yeah. But as you do that, you'll get more in touch with yourself instead of like what other people want you to think.
Yeah, it's a really good point actually, because I often speak to people and they will say, I can't meditate or I don't know how to meditate. And actually, you don't need to create a set of rules around it. You can just sit with yourself. And it doesn't have to even be 10 minutes, right? You can start smaller, maybe even 2 or 3 minutes, just to get used to that silence or being with your thoughts, noticing what comes up, the emotions, the feelings, exactly like you say. And think of it more as a practice rather than a doing or a not doing. I
Mhm.
think
Yeah.
is really helpful as well. No, that's a great point. So, yeah, being in silence, I think there's probably so many people that are like, I can't do that. I can't be with my thoughts. I'm laughing at myself thinking about the people that are saying that right now. So, um, what other lessons did you learn specifically on your transition. So a year, you said it took you to get through that uncertainty, which for
Mhm.
me sounds like a really long time. And I think for people who are thinking, okay, I'm not sure if I want to do this job anymore, I'm not happy in my career, I want to start doing something new, having a year of uncertainty seems like a
Mhm.
really long time. So what lessons did you pick up in that time that other people might be able to benefit from?
Uh-huh. Yeah, so I mean, I definitely don't recommend just quitting everything and just, finding yourself for a year, unless that's what you want to do. Like there's that movie Eat, Pray, Love, where she goes off for a year and travels. That could be fun, but you don't need to go all in. You can start small. So in your job, if you don't like your job, I guess I'd recommend like on the side after work or one weekday, just do something that you like, see where it goes. Just start what you love now instead of waiting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think so many people, actually, someone said to me today, all I do is work, sleep, eat, and play sports. And I was like, well, if you're enjoying that, then that's great. Like, that's absolutely fine. But is that how
Yeah.
you want to live the rest of your life? And then I guess that thinking started like, do I want to do this for the rest of my life? Or what do I want to do? And then it's like you said just now, finding that time to find what you enjoy and start doing things that you love. And then eventually turning it into your career or your business or something that you want to do longer term or in the future. I guess that's not to say, I think you made it quite clear actually that if you are happy with what you're doing, then that's fine, right? But if
Mhm.
not, then it's time to start thinking about things slightly differently.
Right.
One of the comments I often get is that I just haven't got time.
Uh-huh.
How do
Yeah.
you deal? I guess you get that with your clients as well, right? How do you deal with that? What kind of recommendations do you have that are for people, especially if they've got mortgages to pay, they've got children, they haven't got time to start thinking about themselves and things that they love and they're passionate about. Have you got any advice for those people?
Yeah. Yeah. I love everything you say, by the way. Um, yeah. So usually I find it's not that people don't have time, it's that they don't have clarity. They're and they do have the weekend. They have Saturday, Sunday, like, or maybe they only have one day if they're working like, weekends. They have like evenings or mornings or whenever they're free, but they just can't get themselves to do anything else besides work because maybe it's like they're overwhelmed by all the choices or like, the uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lack of clarity more than not having time because we can find 30 minutes in a day. Like, yeah, it's, and for getting clarity, I'd recommend doing some kind of journaling of, when you're in that overwhelm or like, I don't like this. Like, I don't like what's happening in my life. I want to change something, but I don't know what to change. Like, kind of venting about it in a journal and then looking through. And when you write it down, it actually helps you become more logical about it and find where you have like thinking traps. And then to unravel those thinking traps and then work through logically, like, what's the next step? What do I want to do?
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
I really like that not having clarity because actually the people that say they don't have time, I wonder how much time they spend watching TV, scrolling through social media, and doing those kind of like, I'll say addictive activities that you don't realize you're spending so much time doing. And if you can clear your headspace away from those activities and dedicate it to like journaling, like you say, That's a great activity. I actually found for myself journaling really hard to begin with, and
Um,
I would sit down before going to bed with my journal, and I'd just sit there looking at the paper like, what am I supposed to write?
yeah.
And now I stopped at that point because my brain was just so clouded. I just didn't know where to start. And now that I've gone a long way with it, and now I'm obsessed with journaling, I just love writing every day because it's just like all your ideas coming out. And
Yeah.
I think I'll let you answer. Do you have one piece of advice for someone who's not tried journaling before or has tried it and it didn't work? Where should they start with that?
Mhm. Yeah, so like I totally relate to having a hard time journaling actually because like as a writer when I was younger until like recently actually I was really good at journaling. Like I journaled every day. And now I understand people who are like it's so hard to journal, which I think is really good because, it's good to have a personal understanding because sometimes we can't have compassion for others until we go through it.
Mhm.
Um, but the thing is, it's like there's so much stuff in my mind, and I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if it's worth it to write this down. I think that's the block of like not being able to write anything when you see that blank paper. So I think in that situation, I'd say your voice matters. What you have to say matters. So when you're writing in your journal, and you're like, why should I even write this? I think about it more as like, why shouldn't you? It's your personal journal. Yeah, and your voice matters and what you have to work through, even though you might think it's not like Shakespeare or it's not like, this is just like my thoughts, and I'm not sure it's helpful or worth it to write it down. It is worth it to write it down. Just write it down. It's okay. No one's
Yeah.
judging you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that I was scared about at the beginning was someone picking up my journal and reading it. And if I'd gone too deep, would they know something about me that I didn't want them to know? Um, that was one thing that came up. So then when I started getting into it, the trick, let's say, that I used was just writing down 3 or 4 lines that I was thankful for in that day. And that got me into the habit of just writing. And then
Mhm.
after I got over that, I guess it was a little bit of fear of being judged. I started getting a bit more confident with it and then being a bit more open with what I was writing and expressing myself. And actually, now listening to you say that confusion, I just didn't know where to start before. I think that was holding me back. So that's a really good point about just start writing something and just, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. My ninth grade teacher, English teacher, told us just spew, like write everything down, do a
Yeah.
brain dump.
Yeah. I had a chat with someone the other day actually, and he was saying, "Oh, I really dislike writing. I don't want to journal."
Mm.
And I said, "Well, is there something that you do like doing? How else could you try it?" And he was like, "How about if I send myself voice notes?" And I was like, "Yeah, you could try that, see how you feel." So I'll check back in with him, see how that's going. But I guess that's a
Yeah,
way of getting things out of your head and onto something. And you can also listen back. Same with your journal, right? You can read it back and see what's going through your mind. So I like that as an alternative for those that really don't want to write.
right. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And
Go on, sorry.
oh yeah. Um, no, I lost it. Go ahead.
Sorry, I threw you off there. I was just
Oh.
going to say, going through your period of uncertainty, um, is there a piece of advice that you would give your younger self who is going through that right now?
Mhm. Oh, yeah, I'd give them a hug.
Love that.
I'd give her a hug, be like, it's okay. Yeah. Um, Advice, I feel like no matter what I say, she would just feel however she feels anyway.
Yeah.
So I'd mostly just hold space for her. Yeah, maybe to vent or like, it's okay, and be compassionate about the work in progress. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good point, actually, because I think if I think back to the time when I was most uncertain, I would just want my future self to come and give me the answers. But you need to figure it out for yourself, I guess. Just keep making mistakes, keep learning, keep growing until you find what's right for you.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also like, unless I find it in myself, if someone tells me, like, for example, I had a client who was like, I want to spend more time with my family. And we came to the conclusion that it's more that he needs to be more present when he is there.
Mhm.
And if I had told him that, like, if I'd been like, you need to be more present, and then versus like how he came to that realization on his own, it would have been different. Like, he would have just been like, oh yeah, I've heard that like so many times, like be present, like every spiritual teacher talks about this. But like when you realize it yourself, then it has a profundity that you realize this about your life. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I think we should finish on that because it was such a lovely point. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. Great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. And there we have it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you found value, make sure you share it with a friend or share it on social media so someone else can find value from it. The biggest takeaway for me was that Jenna had a year of uncertainty, of not knowing what she wanted to do. And a year sounds like a really long time, but once you've found your passion or your purpose, it's all worth it. So no matter what you're going through right now, what kind of uncertainty, know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Take your time, be gentle with yourself, and as Jenna would do, give yourself a hug and just know that everything will turn out okay in the end. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you same time next week.